So there's so much uncertainty and there's so much economic drama surrounding COVID. And during times of uncertainty, so many things change. But our approach has never changed. For us, buying property has always been about waiting for the right opportunity. So first and foremost, our job is to identify value where no one else saw it. That's what we've got to do as a syndicator. So there's a framework that we use to do that, and we work our way down from the more macro items all the way down to the micro. We start at a state level and understand what's moving in that state and the opportunities there. We move through to sector, to precinct, to asset, to tenant, and then finally to rent. And once we've answered questions in each of those sectors, then we know we've rounded out our due diligence, and really we've got an asset that we think will stand the test of time. I've been asked this question many times, why Victoria? And the reason is that when everyone turns left and runs away, we've got to look beyond that and understand, well, is there an opportunity here by turning right and staring in to some of this uncertainty and being able to capitalize on that? So the first thing we decided is if we're going to buy in Melbourne, we want to be in the right sector. And right now, Melbourne has just had the biggest month on record for online sales. So immediately we felt there that industrially, transport and logistics, which is servicing that online delivery, that was a place we wanted to play. Then you've got to understand, where do you want to acquire that? And there's pockets of amazing relevance in Melbourne, and there's areas that are not so relevant. So obviously we wanted to be on the right side of that fence. And we picked a logistical hub, which is absolutely pivotal to Melbourne's transport and logistics. As an area, Laverton North is a absolutely premium industrial precinct, which stands right next door to Inner West. So there's a real significance to Laverton North because it's got a density of amazing tenants, so very good neighbouring tenants. It's got fantastic access, fantastic arterial routes running through it, and it's allowing any transport user to directly link with the Port of Melbourne, but also directly link with Adelaide and directly link with New South Wales. So we honed in on Laverton North as a suburb that we really wanted to be in. So when you're looking at industrial users in the transport and logistics industry, accessibility is absolutely paramount. So yes, we've ticked the box on Laverton North, but now we wanted to go one step further and get a corner site in that location, which allows 2 street frontages, dual accessibility, and allows a truck to drive right in and right out without taking a turn. Now that there is gold, not for us, but for our end occupier, the tenant. And that's where we wanted to make sure this asset was going to be relevant for them. So some of the other questions we need to ask ourselves when we're talking about the tenant and who's paying that rent. Firstly, the question of security. Who's paying it and are they going to be around tomorrow? And we've ticked those boxes and understood that intimately. Then we want to understand if that rent is at a market-related level. And it absolutely is. It's smack bang in the middle of the market, which means that if we lost that tenant, we were to get a new one in place and they'd pay the same rent as is currently being paid. So when we grab all the information we've gathered along the way during our due diligence process and we plug all that data into a model, what we've found now is a stunning asset that we can acquire today at a cheaper price than it was pre-COVID. Holistically, we're taking our investors' funds and we're placing them alongside ours into 97 Boundary Road, Laverton North. Now that would be fantastic, but it's sight unseen, and that's a real differential to the way we've acquired assets in the past. So the first thing we needed to do is triangulate different sources of information to give us comfort that this asset was everything we wanted it to be. And part of that triangulation was an independent valuation, independent finance, independent technical due diligence report, but also broadening on top of all of that was the balloon of a PwC consultancy engagement, which gave us a huge amount of comfort on everything that our due diligence was made up of. We really wanted to mitigate the risks here for us and our investors. And the way we've done that is by structuring 2 things as part of the deal here. The first thing we've structured is that the lease that's going to commence on settlement is a triple net lease. Now that means that the tenant is responsible for all the capital expenditure on the air cons or the roofing or the guttering or the hard stand for the entire premises that they occupy, which is 75% of our property. So that's a real win for us because it takes the risk off the investor and places it back on the tenant who knows that site best. The second thing we did is we went one step further and agreed with the seller of this property that they would guarantee 75% of the rent for the property for 3 years. That is a phenomenal achievement, which takes the risk off us and our investors and places it back onto the seller, because we're the ones taking the risk about buying in Melbourne in uncertain times. And we didn't want that for our investors. We wanted to look that risk in the eye and then mitigate that risk up front. So from day one, we've got essential services paying the rent, guaranteed by an independent third party, and 75% of the rent is covered by a triple net lease. Ultimately, it couldn't be more exciting. Now, the beautiful thing here is that we've mitigated all our risks along the way in acquiring the site, and we've got guarantees for the first 3 years, and we've got triple net leases, which really underpin that security. So the strategy here on exit is we can reset those leases and let that asset sail into the sunset. Now, we're extremely comfortable with the due diligence we've done on that pathway, but it's not often you get a couple of different abilities to exit a property, and one that can create enormous uplift. The other way we've looked at now is a feasibility to completely redevelop the site. Now, at the moment, there's 7,000 square meters of net lettable area on the site, and it's a 2-hectare site. We believe that the market resounds at an average of about 11,000 square meters for this site, which means that there's an extra 4,000 square meters of net lettable area that we can generate from a complete redevelopment. Not just that, but if we did redevelop this site and we offered it to the booming cold storage industry, and at the moment there's 2.5 million cubic meters of undersupply in cold storage in Australia, just to reach the global average. If we were to tiptoe into that industry and create a facility for that end user, we can escalate our rent as well. 97 Boundary Road, Laverton North, is a 2-hectare corner site in the most prestigious industrial precinct of Melbourne, backed by 3 ASX listed and national tenants, all of whom are COVID-proof essential services, which offers our investors a 6.5% net annual return, independently backed by the seller. And that's why we're so proud to offer Pathway 15 to our investors.